I had this random guy leave a comment on my video about the Acolyte over on Reddit who said, I think you'd do better than get hung up on the sort of lowest common denominator identity politics stuff in the show's fandom. It was such a thinly veiled insult and so out of touch with what women experience in the fandom, especially in the Star Wars fandom, that it sort of lit a fire under my butt. And then the cancellation happened. And I'm finally getting around to writing this, and I want to talk about these types of comments. Identity politics stuff, woke garbage, real Star Wars fans, bad writing. You know what these things actually mean. You've seen them plenty of times in the last week, as every single social media post expressing disappointment over the cancellation was bombarded with them. This is unprecedented. This is an election year. This is worrisome. Because how we view identity politics is directly related to how we consume stories. You can't just ignore this part. Star Wars especially deals with groups identified by their social class, their economic class, their sex or gender, and their religion. And we cannot dissect the meaning of this story without having to confront our own identity group. How we fit into a society based on those identity groups is a part of our prejudices. What Star Wars actually offers is a chance for us to view those different perspectives, which it hasn't really done until very recently. Don't get me wrong, all stories can potentially impact people in different ways. I think as a storyteller, you just hope that someone out there will get something from it. But what women and people of color and queer people have been doing for decades is finding themselves in the cracks of the stories of the Star Wars universe. They hone in on the lesser characters, or they relate to the main characters' lesser explored characteristics. For example, Kylo Ren killing his father was a beautiful tragedy for people who grew up with parents that failed them, who didn't accept them for various reasons. I personally found relation to Anakin's temper and his selfishness to protect the people that he loves at all costs, even if that meant hurting others. If we squint just a little bit more, we can probably find relation to any character, even the ones that we initially despise, especially the ones we initially despise. Why we project on these characters is really interesting to me, and that's what I'm always trying to talk about and explore in my videos. But I've said it before, and I'll scream about it forever. These guys don't want to know why. They don't want to know why they like this Luke Skywalker instead of this Luke Skywalker. They'll give you reasons. They'll say that Rian Johnson ruined Luke Skywalker, whatever that means. But they hide their reasons behind this language because they don't actually want to delve into their own stuff. They don't want a story that holds the mirror up to them and says, no, the Jedi are actually the problem. The white, straight men and the patriarchal systems that control the world are actually the problem. You are actually the problem. Robert Bly has a lot to say about this, that young men in America are taught to project their shadows rather than eat them, absorb them, or deal with them in any meaningful way. When you don't eat the shadow, it follows you around, growing more and more dangerous as you ignore it. And the lashing out, the anger that these guys have that fuels their hate, predominantly towards women and minorities, comes from this shadow that's fermented inside them because they're unable to do the work on themselves that would make them happy. The quick and easy path to the dark side is lashing out like this, projecting instead of getting to the root of why you are mad. It's not bad writing, and forgive me for psychoanalyzing an entire group of people, but you made it too easy. You've acted as a collective. You used the same language. You're all mad at the same thing, and you're bad people who haven't learned to be mindful. It's not bad writing. You just don't know how to consume stories. And a lot of you are going to comment nasty things below this video because doesn't it just feel good to call me a bitch? To tell me to cry harder? Because that's so much easier than thinking about what I'm actually saying. Let's talk about romance. As of July 7th, 2024, there were 98 Oshimir fiction works on the archive. As of August 3rd, 2024, there were over 300. That's 200 unique works written in 1 month. That's a lot for Star Wars, from what I've observed. And that's not to mention the countless artworks, mood boards, fic prompts, gift sets, meta essays, thirst tweets, Discord convos. So many people are into this dynamic. And it's not just new fans or Raylos or minorities, it's all of that. It's also mostly women. I don't have hard stats to back this up. I'm not even sure how I'd go about that, to be honest. So my sources are purely anecdotal. Know that I'm not the only one that observed this surge in the Star Wars fandom. Even the fans who had been part of the old guard of the Star Wars fandom made comments during the show's run and shortly after about how they were joining the Oshmiers because we seemed more fun and chill and creative. And we are. Seeing this dynamic in fandom when a new ship inspires people to be so active is always really interesting to me because how we interact with these characters and these fictional dynamics can tell us a lot about ourselves, both in an individual sense and as a collective. And boy, oh boy, are there interesting things happening in this fictional dynamic. The cancellation is not going to change that. Oshmiers are still creating, writing, drawing, making edits, talking about it. That's transformative fandom, where one look, one touch can inspire people to take it further. It's fun, and it never ends. But what a cancellation means is that our perspectives don't belong in this universe. Yes, there are more active male, middle-aged Star Wars fans compared to women. But that's because one, the stories being made are overwhelmingly not being targeted towards women. And two, many men in the fandom actively work at making women feel dismissed, unwanted, and unsafe. And these are facts. You cannot deny that this is the reality. But with The Acolyte, women watching this recognize tropes that are often more expected in media that is made for them. Emotional tension, repressed power, strained relationships, distrust of authority, betrayal of the father, shirtless men, feminine fury, and yeah, romance. A lot of women were still on the fence waiting for a renewal announcement to finally get invested in it because the streaming model is broken, and why get invested in something that is going to just be canceled anyway? They saw the TikToks and the edits around The Stranger and the story that was unfolding between these two. Romance novels are the highest grossing fiction genre in the world. And fans of these books would love to see these tropes that they love in a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars is sexy. It's always been sexy, but the male-dominated fandom and some people at Lucasfilm and in Disney are deathly afraid of sex. And when I say sex, I don't mean explicitly. I just mean the simple acknowledgement of it. The tension and the romance, the before and after shots, babies being born, are all more than enough to imply sex. And yet, those things haven't happened since the prequels. Andor had a morning after scene, which was bold, but I don't know who this woman is or what the sex meant, so it's sort of meaningless. Ben died before any sex could be possible, but the Acolyte was saying, yes, these two people are gonna have sex. And I wanted to see how they would get to that point. Romance alongside sex is transcendence to me. I understand there are people who this doesn't apply to. I don't want to put any additional modifiers on this. Skip this section if it makes you uncomfortable. Intimacy with another person, either actual physical in the real world or in fiction, in a fantasy, can be rebellious. It can push boundaries that need to be pushed, that could never be pushed in any other way. It can wake us up to things inside of us that were dormant, that needed to be caressed and told it was okay to want to be touched, to want to be seen. And what we explore through consuming stories of this intimacy is love in different bodies, from different perspectives, with different partners. It's transporting us into a different way of being and being seen by someone who wants you. It's about us, and it's also not about us. It gives us a chance to project onto these characters, watch, learn, and then hopefully retrieve that projection. Eating the shadow. Romance and sex working together in story combines physical and non-physical needs, where the body can be viewed as a conduit for emotion. Actions tell us a lot about a person's wants, needs, motivations. desires, etc. And sex is actionable. And the reason I think this is so important to talk about is because things like censorship against sex, censorship against sexuality, the resurgence of mainstream purity culture, trad wives, viewing people's bodies as something to be controlled, especially women's bodies, controlled, maintained, optimized. These perspectives are all linked together and they're leading us backward to a more patriarchal culture. And you'll see how a lot of women will take to fan fiction in order to read and write erotica about these characters because the lack of sexuality leaves them yearning for more. Sexuality experienced through fiction offers up all the symbols that we need to practice individuation. Erotic language includes the use of parental forms and power dynamics. Yes, daddy. Destructive aspects exist in the more extreme elements of like sadomasochism. And of course, you have the anima and animus, the feminine and the masculine, that are also encountered there. The practice of reading and writing in general, not just erotica, but especially erotica, is predominantly about eating your shadow. You project onto these characters, give them conflict, and then resolve that conflict. And the fanboys that complain about bad writing, they're not the ones who are often writing their own stories, whether fanfic or not, because doing so would require them to sort out their own garbage. Again, the dark side, the hate, the lashing out is the quick and easy path, much easier than exploring why you feel that way. But over here, in my fandom communities, our ability to transform and create and love is ultimately stronger than your hate. That's what Star Wars is about. In the end, it's more powerful because it outlasts everything else. It lasts in the things that we create and the friends that we make and the conversations that will stick with us forever, making us better people. And I know it's cheesy and cringe, but it's true. We are more powerful than them. Sadly, I don't think we'll ever get to see Osha and the stranger kiss, but I've read them kissing for the first time hundreds of times, and it'll never get old. This was a source of inspiration for me, and nothing that these guys do, not even canceling it, is going to take it away from me. So to all of you that were part of the campaign of hate, I am more powerful than you. I'm sorry that you're angry. I'm sorry that the patriarchy taught you to project all that shit onto others instead of being mindful and empathetic. I'm sorry that you're getting conned by grift tubers who are using rage bait to get clicks and ad revenue. And I'm sorry that I probably can't say anything or do anything to convince you otherwise. All I can do is talk about the things that I love and the stories that inspire me, write fiction, explore these things in myself, and hope that someone out there gets something from it. Thanks for watching.